Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Anthony Joshua is calling for an undisputed fight, saying on Twitter that it has to happen, that's what he wants. I'll get to that, but I think the key part of this video is how do we actually get there, because it's not just as easy as saying, okay, they need to fight next, because it's simply not. And I want people to check their fanboy BS at the door here for this video. Actually listen to the video and some of the things that have to happen to get that fight, because you can't just click your fingers and it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. They have fights already lined up. And I've seen all manner of silliness in recent days, in the week since Joshua beat Ruiz Jr., from both sides, saying that, you know, one doesn't want the other, etc. It's not that simple either. They want this fight, both of these guys, but they have their careers which are dictated by different forces and factors, but also they have upcoming fights. But we'll get to this, so buckle in. Let's go. So we'll start with the Joshua tweet, because he said on Twitter, "Let's get Undisputed trending. That's what I want, and that's what people want. I want it bad. I came to take over and not take part." And you can see here, so 8.5 or 8.8k retweets, 53,000 likes. And throwing that out there, I was a little surprised just for the fact that Josh was already said he doesn't want Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury mentioning him until they get through their fight in February. And that is still to be announced, but that is expected to take part February 2020, February the 22nd, I should say. So the fact that he's brought this up, it is going to whip up fans on both sides of this divide. But also not just Wilder's fans, but Fury fans as well, because they will think that Fury can get past Wilder, and should he do so, probably there will be a rematch. But if he outright beats Wilder 2 times, then he could do whatever he wants, including an undisputed fight. So for the purposes of this video, we will be talking about Fury as well. So the key thing and the main barrier at this point for Undisputed is scheduling. Simply put, they all have fights lined up, and Joshua has made no secret he wants to keep his titles together. So that means he's going to have to defend 2 mandatories in 2020. So already it starts to become a little bit sort of ropey about when would this undisputed fight actually happen. Because if Joshua just goes off and fights the winner of Wilder Fury, doesn't take care of one of those mandatories, well, there's no undisputed fight, because one of the belts would have been shared off and someone else fighting for it. So scheduling is the key thing. Joshua, he's only fights 2 times a year at this point in his career. So does Deontay Wilder. Will that change in 2020? Or are we talking about Undisputed in 2021? You actually have to look at these things. And for Joshua, if he was to have a fight with Kubrat Pulev sometime between March and May, then you can add on maybe another 5 or 6 months until the next fight, which would be Alexander Usyk. That's if he can work out some sort of deal for Pulev to go first and Usyk to go second. He obviously has to win them. But then that doesn't leave a lot of runway for the rest of 2020. Maybe you could squeeze in an undisputed fight in December 2020, but it depends on scheduling. And Joshua has these long 3-month camps, so that already squeezes time to begin with. Deontay Wilder, as I mentioned as well, he only fights twice a year as well. Should he lose to Tyson Fury, that probably means a rematch maybe some point in the second half of 2020. But if he wins, well, I could see him being available for a potential fight at the back end of 2020 with an Anthony Joshua if everything all played out. But it's boxing, lots of ifs, buts and maybes. And you try to predict 1 year out or more, you really are a clairvoyant if you can do that and predict it accurately, because nothing we've seen in recent years has gone to plan how fans wanted it to go. It's a situation of hurry up and wait. So just throwing out this tweet from Anthony Joshua that he wants Undisputed, he wants it to get trending, this is what he's in the game for, etc. It's easier said than done. And putting aside scheduling for a moment, because that's a big part of this Undisputed puzzle, you've got all these peripheral issues which are key to a fight actually happening. You've got the whole A side, money, Eddie Hearn, him being a factor, broadcasting, and also timing. You have to get onto this probably now if you want it to happen, maybe in a year's time. So I want to talk about all those briefly because they are important. We've seen from previous negotiations that they did matter, they were issues, and likely to be so again. The whole A side, This is going to be a problem for this fight because both Anthony Joshua, both Deontay Wilder, and even Tyson Fury, they consider themselves to be the A side in any equation, any way you cut it, which whoever's fighting who. They all believe they are the top dog. And because they do so, they want either an even cut of the money, or in Joshua's case, he wants more. The biggest offer that he put out to Deontay Wilder in the end was 60-40. They wouldn't come any higher, and Anthony Joshua made no secret, as did his promoter Eddie Hearn, that they thought 40% was generous. So they don't want to come up to 50-50, but let's face it, if there is going to be an undisputed fight, it probably is going to have to be a 50-50 sort of equation. As I've said all the way back from 2018, Deontay Wilder has that final piece of the puzzle that Anthony Joshua wants, and he's likely going to have to overpay, but not just that, pay more than he ever would want to. And if Wilder keeps the belt, decides not to unify because he doesn't like the money, then that denies a piece of legacy that Anthony Joshua could fight for. And Wilder and his team know that they don't have to just roll over here. And at the moment, his value has been increasing. So he would argue that he would deserve 50-50. And fans will have their thoughts on that on either side of the argument. The Joshua side would argue, well, Joshua just got paid $80 million in Saudi Arabia. Deontay Wilder reportedly about $20 million for his rematch with Luis Ortiz, a fight no one was really calling for. Although the pay-per-view numbers, solid, about 275 plus, not exactly stellar numbers, but it was a fight no one really wanted. And Tyson Fury has previously said he should be the 60-40 side, not the other way around with Joshua. So whatever way you cut it, the whole A-siding and the money, it's all intertwined. And if they really want the fight, if Joshua is saying he really has to have that and it has to happen, probably 50-50 is going to be the number to get it done. And a lot of fans won't like that, but if we want this undisputed fight, it could just be a reality. And Wilder has already made that a bottom line a number of months ago. And I guess the other thing with this whole situation, there's been quite an acrimonious sort of vibe between Eddie Hearn, the promoter for Joshua, and Shelley Finkel, the co-manager for Deontay Wilder. But Hearn, if he's going to be involved in a deal, he's got to dial back on the rhetoric, because if Joshua wants the fight to happen, there has to be a smooth sort of path to negotiating this, not having, prickly barbs being thrown out all the time, as we've seen it. As we've already seen in the week or so since Joshua beat Andy Ruiz Jr. in the rematch, Hearn has been out in public trashing Deontay Wilder's attendance figures for his most recent fight, 7,000 tickets sold. And if Hearn thinks that that is going to be the path and going to be helpful to making a Wilder fight, he's sorely mistaken. Every time that he's criticised Finkel or Wilder and trashed them in public, Deontay Wilder bristles, and it ends up making it harder to do a deal than otherwise if he had have either stayed quiet or at least tried to keep things amicable. And this whole thing hasn't necessarily been amicable with both sides, including Wilder, trashing Joshua, trashing Hearn. But the thing is, they have to dial it back. They have to know that this is a business after all, and if they're going to get a deal done, they're going to have to sit round a table and hash it out. And that probably needed to start right now if they want to make it even for a year's time or even for 2021. We have to be realistic about that. They need to get on it now because there's so many factors that could be a fishhook to preventing this fight. One of them being broadcasting. And depending on who has the belt, say if it's Wilder or Fury, there's fishhooks there because, let's face it, Deontay Wilder's American broadcast partner, be it Fox or Showtime through the PBC deals that they have with them, they want it to be on their network, and Joshua and his promoter Eddie Hearn would be expecting it would be on DAZN. And that sort of becomes a bit of a thorny issue because Joshua's current provider, DAZN, doesn't do pay-per-view. So it's not like for like with the Fury and ESPN where maybe they can work out a revenue sharing deal. DAZN doesn't do pay-per-view. PBC will want to deliver a pay-per-view to Fox or Showtime, more likely Fox at this point, if an undisputed fight could happen. So that in itself becomes a pretty thorny and gnarly issue. And on the Fury side, the domestic broadcasting arrangements would be tricky between BT and Sky. Both of those outlets would want the fight outright and wouldn't want to share it. There's a lot of tough and tricky issues, including, how you split the revenue. Even if you can get a deal worked out, it would not be an easy deal to do. the whole logistics and getting everything together, and even where you have it, that's going to be thorny as well. And if this fight does happen, is it just one fight and that's it? Or is it a 2-fight deal? That in itself makes it a bit tricky about where you have the first one and the second one. But the bottom line is, if they really want this to happen, the planning would need to start now in terms of working out the actual details. If it just languishes for months and months and months, and then all of a sudden it becomes a possibility, say Wilder is completely available, Josh was completely available, which they both could be near the end of 2020, well then what? If you leave it till that point and decide that's when they'll get round the table and start working on this, all of a sudden you could see that it could be too late by then as well. But if people want to be realistic, it's probably not happening next year. The scheduling, probably because they fight twice a year, I don't know if it lines up. 2021, probably more realistic, if at all. Are we ever going to see this fight? I don't know. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.